I enjoyed it way more than I expected to, and I might just be in the mood for this one of these days. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. Uh, I like his vocals once I realized why I liked them, because at first they were bothering me, but then when I realized what they sounded like, I was like, oh no, I like Dave Mustaine. In December of 1994, Epitaph Records, oddly enough, I didn't realize it was on Epitaph,
Yeah.
released an album called Riches to Rags by RKL, Rich Kids on LSD.
Hmm.
And I had heard them sporadically through the years and just never really paid a lot of attention to them. I always knew that they were a big influence on NoFX. There was something about it I didn't really care for.
Hmm.
Now, when I listened to the album this time, everything kind of just clicked for me. And I'm so glad that at the end of this podcast last week, I said, hey, let's throw Rags to Riches in there. Or excuse me,
Hmm.
Riches to Rags in there. Let's throw RKL in there. Because you were kind of like, oh, yeah, that'll work. It
Yeah.
was like, it kind of, you just weren't expecting it. And I'm just glad that I did, because if I didn't, I don't know when I would have listened to this again, and I might not have been in the right same mood or whatever it was. But I sat in
Uh-huh.
here today and I listened to it. Listened to part of it last week, but today I sat in here and listened to it, no headphones, man, on a stereo, pretty loud, while I was sewing some patches on some clothes. I was fixing some clothes, right?
Yeah.
So I was just zoned in on the music, man. And there's a lot of stuff I learned about it today that I hadn't taken the time to learn about it in the past. And I just want to say, man, this band is very, very good. I'm not gonna always want to hear them. They're not that kind of band. They're not like Rancid. But damn, I think I had them just. I don't know what I thought about them. I don't think I ever disliked them. There was just something about it that wasn't working for me. But it is fully clicked on now.
Yeah, I mean, I get it too, because you tend to not like these bands whose brand is dysfunction. Like as someone, I think in your
Heard.
life now who's very like together, you
Yeah,
don't as much. You're not as entertained by these rock and roll tragedy kind of bands, and
it's a good
RKL.
point.
RKL just sort of fits that. Like that's a
Yeah,
lot of their legacy, because they're one of those bands that's kind of only legacy in a lot of ways. Like that's kind of how I like. I don't particularly like them, although maybe they're a band I would say, like we were talking about earlier, that I would consider myself a fan of. And it's more
okay,
because I like so much of the stuff, obviously, that they spawned. In particular,
right.
NoFX. Like that's the one that's the most direct influence, where you can see it's one of those things. Like if you rip off a band that wasn't that big, it's not that big of a deal. I think like a lot of people think NoFX started a lot of that sound, and they did. They put a lot of that together, but a lot of that comes from RKL, specifically with both the bass sound and with like I think the specific attitude that NoFX has comes from this RKL, like their specific brand of sneering and attitude. It's different than what we're going to talk about a little bit later on with Bad Religion. Even though NoFX sings about a lot of the same stuff that Bad Religion
Right.
sings about, the way they present it is more in the way that RKL presents it. Now,
Well,
NoFX,
I've got some notes on this record for in a minute. Yeah, for
I
sure.
think NoFX is like smarter than RKL, so in that way they're closer to Bad Religion. So they
Okay.
sort of split the difference between the two. But this is again, it's sort of like that skate punk idea at its purest form, without it being refined in any way. Because so much of like what I talk about are the Fat Records bands, which are aside from Propaganda, which also is kind of in this category of like the founding bands. There, the NoFX, the Ladwagons, the No Use for Names, Strung Outs, all of them, all those bands that have like that sort of little bit of that metal influence, but they're the hardcore skate punk, which is really just hardcore pop punk. I think is the best way to describe that music, and they're all of that same sound, but all of that stuff is just a little bit more melodic than what RKL starts out with.
Right.
RKL
Right.
is just a little more sloppy, and I think intentionally on that way. It's still not quite something that feels like a real origins in a real dark kind of street punk. It still has that sort of irony that NoFX and all that
Right.
stuff had. It just wasn't as refined. Kind of like we were talking about Grimple, but even less so.
Mhm.
Like Grimple's even I think a little bit more refined than
Well,
RKL.
so first and foremost, okay, I got a couple things I want to say about this record. So, uh, one, it's 11 songs and it clocks in at 42 minutes. That seems like a lot, right? Until you start listening to the songs. Uh, I think one of the things that about this band that stands out the most is that they're not really a punk band. They're a bunch of punk dudes playing metal. This is a metal band, bro. This sounds
Mhm.
more like Municipal Waste than it does anything else
Well,
I've ever heard.
and so that's what I was gonna get. This is what they call the nardcore music, which is where NoFX comes out of, and RKL is kind of considered the Godfather band. And
Okay.
the common thread of all that is these kids that kind of grew up as thrash metal kids. To be honest with you, they grew up
Yeah.
in the thrash metal scene, but they all just kind of like they fit into punk. And so
Yeah.
everyone, like in all those bands I just mentioned, Noise for a Name, Lagwagon, all of them. Part of why there's a lot of that metal riffage in skate
Right.
punk
Right.
is it comes from and this is sort of the missing link, I guess, between say like a thrash metal album, like a thrash metal album and a Lagwagon album do not sound alike. But you could hear a lot of what
But
you
yeah,
hear
but
on
if you put
a
this one in the
Lagwagon
middle,
album from an RKL album, you can see
right.
the connection. Yeah, I think it's the
Right.
broader point
Well,
that I'm making. Yeah.
I think bands like Municipal Waste are just as punk rock as they are metal, in my opinion. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what that particular brand of like crossover thrash is very
Mm-hmm.
very good. Let me read a couple of things real quick that I wrote
Yeah.
down, and whenever you want to interject, please feel free to do
Okay.
so. I put took me a bit to get took me a little bit, but I got into the vocals. It's like a Motorhead, Motley Crue mixed with punk rock sound. It's unique, and I totally see what NoFX did, and I understand why at this point. Um, I never understood the connection there when I heard them in like bits
Mm.
and pieces, but when you listen to a complete album, dude, you can hear so much of what NoFX turned into. Like early NoFX, more Bad Religion than anything, but like late '90s to now, they sound like RKL, but just like I don't want to say this to be rude, but like they're better. Like they're better at what they do. They're better at songwriting. They're better
It's
at
the only
producing. They're better at
comparison.
recording.
It's the only time NoFX is the band of the comparison, and they're the clean polished band that you're
Right,
comparing them
right.
to. But there is a version of NoFX that's uncleaned and unpolished, and it's exactly this. Like you hit
Yeah.
the nail on the head of what, like in the same way that Bad Religion cleaned up like '80s hardcore punk and turned it into skate punk. NoFX cleaned up RKL and turned it into what
Yep.
NoFX does. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
it's insane, man. And then the album starts off with "We're Back and We're Pissed." It's a great song, great vocals and guitar. The drums are on point, dude.
Mm.
It's a bit long, man. The songs are a bit long, but they're still really good. And as the album went on, that became less of a problem.
Yeah, kind of a jammy feel to it a little bit though with
A little bit, a
some of
little
these
bit.
songs. I think that's kind of that metal influence again too.
I put "Beautiful Feelings" is very thrash influenced, pretty much a metal song being played by punk rockers. Interesting stuff. I hear plenty of differences, but I definitely see where NoFX got a lot of their riff styling from, and for their and like the particular kind of solos that they play
Mm.
from this band, this album in particular. And then "In Your Mind" is the third song. Dude, did you hear the bass, like little bass
Mm.
rolls in that? Dude, it's ridiculous, man. I just put that bass. What the fuck is what I put on here. It makes total sense that Municipal Waste Dude will be playing with these guys now. They sound just like RKL, in my opinion. They're a thrash crossover thrash band. Never realized that. It's like NoFX is the punk version of RKL, and Municipal Waste is the metal version of RKL. They sit very much in the center of both genres. Like you were saying with the Lagwagon thing, that's pretty much what the point I'm making here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, House Guest is a Metallica song at the beginning. Their
Yeah.
slower songs are still pretty fast, and that's kind of awesome. I hear a little Megadeth in the vocals. Will to Survive is a very Bad Religion type song vocally. This one is like if Bad Religion was just a heavier band. And we got Rancho Burger. It's like an intermission or something like that. Give It Up is an okay song, but not one that stands out to me. Betrayed is NoFX Senior at their best here. This is the one song I remember off the album for some reason. I already knew that one. When that one came on, I had remembered hearing. I
Mm-hmm.
remembered hearing it beforehand. Heavily Sedated is a pretty great song. More of what they do well. This album is pretty effing good. This is the first band since Pennywise that when you say skate punk to me, that this band embodies what that is to me. And I personally think that's pretty cool. But like very few bands, when I hear the word skate punk, just immediately pop into my head. It is now Pennywise and RKL. Those bands pop into my head immediately when I hear the word skate punk. HPC, incredible lyrics, man. I'm gonna look those up. Actually, I'm gonna do that right now. Do you have any thoughts so far on the record?
No, and I'm pretty much in agreement with everything you said and all of your kind of analysis on it. They're a very eclectic band, is I think the point that we're getting at too with a lot of they have a lot of different type of stuff in their music. So that's part of why they're not as polished because their stuff's not as tight because they go in
Right.
a lot of different like directions in short time spans. That's why like the record length doesn't really bother me either. Like I was kind of when you said that I was like I didn't realize that this record is that long.
It is, dude. Well, that's the thing is, it's when you look at the song the number of songs and then the length of the album, you're like, oh man, that's going to take a lot of work. And you listen to it, and it doesn't feel heavy and long. Uh, but listen to the lyrics on HPC. It says, "With all your bullshit talk of peace, love the animal rights and humanity. We'll save the whales, dolphins, owls. Excuse me, how about you and me? You've got your head so far up your ass, of course you cannot see. Well, that your preaching and your actions are all so contradictory. HPC. I don't really know what HPC stands for. I don't know if you do or not, but slogan after slogan, 13's one more than 12 steps. When you're crying in your coffee, you'll still be crying nonetheless. Stop the smut. Pot is evil. All you do is rag tomorrow's headlines. Local hero caught in a peep show dressed in drag. Meat is murder. It's just basically I feel like it's a. Now I may be reading this wrong, but to me it felt like people calling out, or these guys calling out like virtue signalers that are hypocrites. No,
Yeah, that's how I kind of that's a that's a big theme in like '90s music, like that. It's kind of the whole theme of the liberal animation album that NoFX
right?
has. Even if they were like later become like thought of as virtual signaling people, it's just something in the '90s people were kind of like
We were different back then, man.
Yeah, because I
We
feel
were
like
different.
people might still not like that these days or whatever, but at least it's as like cliched as one thing or another. But I feel like there's a lot of '90s sentiment. Like a lot of bands have that song. Even bands that I consider very activist in nature. I just think like activism in the '90s was framed as nothing but like tree huggers, so to speak, in one sort of way. And I think a lot of like elite people being annoying versus like I think at least nowadays that we have stuff like the internet that can give you like when you're talking about homeless awareness, you can speak to actual homeless people and not just like
Right.
like the martini rich people who are going to be telling you about that. And that's there's a lot of NoFX songs that are to that exact effect, and I think it's pretty like universally relatable, even if you don't agree or disagree with the specific things that they're railing against. Nobody really likes that
Right.
generally.
Well, I only got a couple more notes on this album. The song "Take Me Home." I said they take us home with a more rock and roll centric song. This one's very good. Great way to close an album, in my opinion. Nice melodic vocals that are a little more drawn out and slow behind some faster vocals. They did a lot of great layering with this one. Um, that's a really good song to close out. I said when I saw the runtime, I was worried. But some of that runtime is the last track being over 10 minutes because of a secret track. And you know how I feel about that nonsense. I hate that stuff. And the secret track is stupid too, so it's not even anything worth a crap. And then the last thing that I wrote down is I wish Dave Mustaine started a punk band, or maybe if Megadeth just played faster songs. This dude's vocals, and I love Megadeth. So when I realized that that's what this dude sounds like, it made me like this band even more. So I am now officially an RKL fan.
I
Due to the
have
fact that he
never
reminds me of Dave
connected
Mustaine.
RKL and Megadeth, but there's other like even little trolly ways that in my head I am connecting those two bands. That's a good analogy though, because they have that like I'm a Megadeth fan too, and I have to like apologize for it sometimes to people because some people just kind of don't get like that band is very heavy and very like fun in the same way. And a lot of thrash is like I think like and I also love Metallica, but people think of thrash as this like very serious thing and not of something that again is
No,
of
thrash
punk
is
rock
definitely more fun.
and has that so like the thrash metal fan is more what like our culture of punk rock is sort of
Right.
like aligned with. Even like what
Yes.
you and I are addressed in is more of that with the thrash metal
Right.
influence. And Megadeth is like that concept, but all the guys are like great musicians. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's kind of like this RKL thing where it's like it's this wild like angry crazy punk, but these guys are kind of really good and they're almost doing so much. Like RKL is almost like man. It's an advertisement for a producer. If you don't like the RKL album and you like the skate punk we're talking about, like that's an argument for like a producer doing what they do. Because this is kind of the raw version again of a lot of those bands, and I don't mean raw. Like obviously it was refined to a point, but like there's just an evolution in this stuff, and I think RKL just like. I really think that's a cool place that they hold it. They're early in an evolution of something because skate punk really is like I think of RKL as what I think of like quote real skate punk, like, and that's such a meaningless term obviously, but like the skate punk that I like is generally like the NoFX, the Lagwagon, the Noise. That's a little bit more on the poppier side. This is just sort of the other end of that spectrum that
This is more my speed.
I guess like Pennywise is the best like public, like Pennywise and Bad Religion are better like public representations of that. but it's a lot of other bands that have good followings and stuff. And like it doesn't surprise me that we're talking about a Bad Religion and RKL today, and the album that came out on Epitaph is the RKL album, which is just a funny thing, just a funny
Right.
piece of irony. But like,
I didn't even put that together.
but like to say this is on Epitaph, like that, it seems out of place on Epitaph because we know Epitaph's whole entire catalog, or even their whole entire '90s catalog. Yeah, like a record label that released Out Come the Wolves and Smash, and even like some of those NoFX records, or the Pennywise records. Like, yeah, this album feels a little bit raw for like an Epitaph record. But if you take yourself back to
Right.
1994, in the midst of all this punk rock kind of popping, this fits exactly what you think of like a Epitaph skate punk, like Southern California. Like, this is exactly all of that stuff.
Dude, I think that I'm just really glad that because there's so much music out there, I'm never going to hear it all. I'm never going to be able to, like right now, I'm listening to all this Cold Oi music. Well, that means that I'm not listening to other stuff like RKL or whatever band that from the 90s I didn't get around to listening to, right? So I'm glad that I was able to get to listen to this and sit down with it and listen to it front to back, uninterrupted, no distractions, sewing a patch on my shorts, uh, jamming out and like pausing it, rewinding in a couple of things. Because that's what I did is I listened to it thoroughly. Excuse me, and I really, really enjoyed it. I'm just so glad that I got to spend some time with it because I've always been told that I was gonna like this record, and I think I was a little headstrong about not liking it. Think it's just assuming that I wasn't going to for some reason.
Well, you tend to not like the records that have that like classic standing to them. And not that you don't
That's
like them,
true.
but if they have something built up, it's hard for anything to ever live up to this thing that you're always told is great.
Yeah, and I and
So
I and I buck the system so just naturally. It's how my brain works that like
yeah,
when I'm told like, "Hey man, you should go listen to this. I think you'll like it." I just for whatever reason naturally go, "Nah, I'm good. I'm not gonna like it." It's so dumb. I hate that I do it, but I do it, and I at least at this age I can recognize it and try to behave a little differently. But I think
that's
that's
cool.
kind of what I was doing.
You found something though that you kind of genuinely, which again, that doesn't like the fact that you like RKL doesn't necessarily surprise me that you would like them, but that like they're a hard band I think to get into like just out of nowhere though too without context though. I wonder if you would like them. You know, like if you didn't know like how much they had influenced these other bands and stuff. Like I don't know that I would like them, and I don't consider myself a huge fan of them. And that's not to undersell
If
them,
I
but I don't like. I just don't know if I would listen to give them the same chance. Maybe is what I'm thinking
so
of.
I'm thinking about that exact same scenario. So if I had heard these guys completely randomly and had no clue that it was from the 90s. Somebody just handed me this and goes, "Hey, listen to this. I think you might dig it." And I go home and I put it on and I wasn't told anything other than listen to this. I think I would have immediately looked up the year it was made because I would have
Mm.
wanted to know who influenced who because it would have been incredibly obvious to me who this band sounds like.
Mm.
And so I do think I might have liked it had I not been told anything and just heard it because I was always told you need to like this and my brain doesn't accept that. I don't accept those kind of words. You can't tell
Mm.
me I need to do something. It's really immature and stupid. I've always behaved that way and it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts just like it does everybody else. I'm trying like okay, example. I've been hanging out with Johnny Rio from the Street Dogs. He comes up to my bar a lot and we talk for like a lot. Dude's awesome. Or yeah, him and his girl come up and we chat for a long time. He's really really sweet dude. And his girlfriend's adorable and sweet. They might be married. I don't actually know. My apologies if they are. Um, Him and I talk about music, and he's a little older than me, and he's from a place. He's from like Boston, like bro. He was in the Mecca, man. Like he's in the place where all the shit
Mm.
I love comes from. So he got to experience things I didn't. So like even he is understanding like, yo, yeah, you were from Houston and you didn't have because he lives here now. So he's like, I get it now. Uh,
Mm.
it's pretty interesting talking to that fella, man. Like, uh, it was funny because he's like, when I told him my opinion on the Clash, you could see the soul hurt. He was like,
Yeah.
oh, and I was like, dude, I'm coming around, man. I'm coming around. You got to give me a little time. I'm working on it. I'm listening to the first record is pretty good at this point to me. So I'm working on the second one now. But the later albums, I don't know that I'm ever going to get into. And he's like, yeah, I can accept that. I was like, but he was like, bro, every time it comes up, he's like, no, I cannot believe it. He's like, I don't get it. But it's all about there's so many factors that come into play. The people that expect you to like stuff, that's just so weird to me. Like, Rancid is my favorite band of all time. I don't expect anybody to like them. That's just it's just weird. Like you like them if you want to.
Mm.
Like I don't know, man. It's very strange.
Yeah, I think like when you violate someone's expectations of what you should like, it throws people off a little bit. Maybe like, oh,
Right.
how does that person like? Because you also like this. How do you not like this? And sometimes
Right.
that is the answer, though. Is like the thing. Like honestly, like RKL, I would put similar to the Clash, although they're just not as well regarded as the Clash. So it doesn't carry the
Right.
same amount of weight. But in the same kind of vein, where I like their music a lot, but like I really love NoFX. So it's more of I have this great appreciation for them, but I'm not always going to listen to them. So therefore, I
Well,
also might not always just be as familiar with them as I probably should be, or as you would assume I am, because of some of the other stuff I like. And it's all personal tastes and choices and
well,
all
I had
these
a
things.
guy that I was talking to about this once, and I explained it like this, and it irritated him for a minute until he realized what I was saying. If you love NoFX and that's like your favorite band, and then you find out that RKL is basically where they got their sound from, you already like that what we established as the cleaned up, better
Mm.
quote unquote version of the band. So why would you then go listen to the lesser version? So my opinion is that Rancid is the best band ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they got a lot of their sounds from the Clash, but why would I go listen to the band that I think is lesser? Like, why would I do that? It just doesn't make any sense. I would rather have the better version. No. And so for
So
that reason,
I get what you're saying because like I just made that exact point with with the RKL. So I get what you're saying, but I would say the counter to that is sometimes there is a desire to feel what that songwriter felt that
that's true.
inspired that thing. Like
And
that that
I'm just running my mouth, man. My opinion has changed
yeah.
quite a bit since I had that conversation with that guy. But like,
No,
you
but that's
know,
also why people get attached to that thing too, because that's why I feel like I do legitimately like the Descendants, but there was something that made me really want to catch on to like what was it that they were putting out that every band I liked, and then I eventually I think caught on to the same thing. So it doesn't really matter, but I think there is a desire to like if you like NoFX, the community of NoFX is implies that you like RKL. That's also part
right,
of it too.
right.
That's also a big part of it. No, you and I are breaking this down from a taste in music and why you would or wouldn't like something. But I think it probably just comes down to more: are you in the in crowd or the out crowd with this thing?
Right.
So you're a fan of this, so you must also be a fan of. And that's just us as humans
That's
just
where
being
I get irritated. It's like,
lazy
well, I
as
shouldn't must like anything. I can like what I want to like. But I, that being all said, that argument being tabled and set aside,
yeah.
I do think there's a place for learning where it came from and liking where it came from, appreciating where it came from. Know your roots. There's music about that we listen to, that songs about that exact thing. I
Mm.
100% understand that, appreciate that, believe that, and agree with that. It's just like when you're a stubborn person and somebody tells you like you should like this, you may not like it just because of that. So stop telling people they need to like something and offer it to them in a more palatable way. Bring it to the table and go, hey, I think this is really good. This is why I think it's really good. What do you think? Versus, hey, you need to like this. I don't know. The message isn't the issue. It's the delivery most of the time.
Because that should be a unifying thing, right? Like, say
Right.
I like the Clash and you like Rancid. So instead of us thinking that like we like these things that are competing against each other for fandom, how about we essentially like the same thing is what we're actually
Right.
saying, and we should kind of be friends on that because we're saying we have basically the same kind of taste. We like the
Yeah.
way this person delivers it or this person delivers it, but we like the same damn thing. It could be a unifying thing, but humans, we
We're all silly idiots, especially
yeah.
me. I'm not claiming any kind of like I'm an idiot with most of this stuff.
No,
But
it's a frustration that I think you and I are even expressing the way our brains do
well, it
this
drives me
thing.
nuts when people tell me what to do. That's really what it is. And I'm a punk rock guy. So why does that surprise anybody? Why
Mhm.
is anybody surprised that when you tell me what to do, that I naturally go, nope, not doing it, and turn around and go the other way, even when I might like what you're talking about? It's delivery, man. It's about coming up to me and having a little bit of respect and going, hey, I've lived a long time on this earth at this point. Give me a little bit of respect, dude. Like I've earned it. I've been through a lot. I've lived a lot. I've done a lot of stuff in this community. I'm not going to know everything. Don't want to know everything. I'm not an authority on anything. Can we just be cool about it? Like, it's the punk rock review, not the punk rock like uh
Authority. Yeah.
authority or
It's not even like the Punk Rock
history.
Hall of Fame or the museum, right? At least that puts some weight of authority of no, yeah, you're just a
It's
dude.
really
Like
I'm just a
respectfully,
dude
you're just a
listening to
dude.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's exactly my point. Is I'm just a guy that listens to this stuff and talks about it. I'm not the authority on it. I'm not a historian. I'm none of those things. I am a reviewer. That's very different. I give my opinion on it and I tell you what it is. and then my opinion might even differ from yours, but you get an idea what it is based on my opinion. So, and then if you get to know me, you'll know based on if I don't like something, maybe you like the things that I don't like. So you go, oh, he doesn't like that very much. Why does he like it? Oh, for that reason. Oh, I might really enjoy this. And then you go listen to like that's what it is. That's how you become. It's like when I watch movie reviewers. There's guys that I know if they hate something, I'm probably going to like it because the reason they hate it is because it's too gory usually, and that's my cup of tea. So I go and look for the things that they don't like. But it's all.
You still get value out of that review, actually, though,
Right.
because there's still. Hey,
Well,
I was in meetings all day
that.
where people who don't know anything about what I do was telling me what to do all day long, and I just sit there and I said, "Yes, sir." So, grace.
That's a lot of fun.
Patience.
Let's see.
The order of the day.
All right, 1 second. I'm looking up something. One more thing. Okay, so before we move on to Bad Religion,
yeah.
Give me an overall opinion on RKL now, and like what you might grade this album if you were asked to.
Probably the 6 to 7. I acknowledge it's very good, but I just don't love it a ton. I don't really. I can't really explain what that is because I do like this kind of music generally. I just don't care for.
So is your 6 to 7 like a subjective 6 or 7, or is that objective?
I think.
So I typically go both with one subjective number and one objective number, so people can understand what I mean.
I think objectively, I would have it a little bit higher.
Okay.
Because it has a plenty of quality. Like I have pretty much positive things to say about it. I just don't find it. It fails a certain listenability test for me. I guess if that's an objective measure, which is not. I
think that's a subjective measure. Yeah.
To my ear, I think it's very good. I think it's very well made. Again, I don't love this concept. I just think it can be refined. I'm feeding into kind of what you mentioned earlier, so that is clouding my analysis. So I would go. I think it's objectively not as good as the more melodic stuff because I don't think it's made as well. So I have it more a positive like 7.5 to 8.
I mean that's a pretty high score. What is more melodic stuff as in what? Give me an example.
Well, of just like even like a NOFX or
okay, that's what I thought. Like that, so you meant that kind of band. Okay,
like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I just think I have my taste is to if you're gonna do that concept. But again, that's also very much personal analysis. I understand as I'm pulling that in. I find nothing very objectionable about this particular, but like for example, the album we're going to talk about next, I can have a lot more criticisms of it, but would just generally categorize it as better music if that kind of makes sense.
I mean, it does make sense. I don't agree with it.
Yeah, it doesn't sound nice. I feel like I'm shortchanging this album by trying to make that very specific point. So that's why I'm kind of
no, dude. Look, here's the thing: is that this album it isn't as palatable as the next album we're going to talk about. It's just not. But that doesn't mean it's good or bad or anything.
Not really a quality statement, yeah.
Yeah, my opinion on it now is that I think objectively it's somewhere around a 9.5, like just quality wise, because it is incredibly good. The guitar work is amazing. The reason I don't give it a higher grade is maybe because of the production more so than the songwriting.
Yeah,
but that still is a that's still a bullet point in the conversation. So it still needs to be talked about. But subjectively, I'm going to go a little lower, though. I'm going to go with like an 8 out of 10 because really I do like, okay, so like 6 months ago, I probably would have given this like a 5 out of 10. Subjectively. I heard it on the right time at the right day. I'm going to go 8, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower. But 8 is a good middle ground for me right now. The reason I'm going to go 8, though, and not higher, because I'm kind of high on the record. You'd think I would go higher on a subjective rating. The reason I'm going to go 8 is because I want to be realistic and honest. And how many times am I going to go back and listen to this record over the next 12 months? I'm going to say maybe once or twice over the next year. That warrants an 8. But if I was like, yeah, man, next week, I'm probably going to listen to this a couple more times. That would be a 9 or higher. And I just don't think I'm going to do it that quick. But I do think I'm going to listen to it again in the next 12 months. So I enjoyed it way more than I expected to. And I might just be in the mood for this one of these days. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. I like his vocals once I realized why I liked them. Because at first they were bothering me. But then when I realized what they sounded like, I was like, oh, no, I like Dave Mustaine. So I'm going to go with a positive feel on this. Because I think that's something you can choose to do. I think you can hear something and then you can choose to go positive or negative sometimes. Sometimes it's a knee-jerk reaction. Sometimes it's a choice. I'm going to choose to enjoy this because of what it sounds like to me. I totally understand all the influence now. I totally get it. It makes me smile. I have been converted to this band's fandom. I'm not a super fan. Wouldn't get a tattoo or nothing. But I really enjoy them. I'd rock a shirt at this point, throw a patch on a hoodie or something. So my whole question was, am I going to keep this album or am I going to get rid of it? And I'm going to keep it. I've got a copy of it. I'm going to keep it. So RKL, man, did a great job with that record. I'm glad that I sat down and gave it a chance. I think it's deserved. So that was a nice conversation, sir.
It was you. I felt like you made the point I was trying to make in such a more elegant way. So I'm happy about that. I'm like, yes, what he said. I wanted to say.
That's rare. I'm usually the idiot. So
you nailed that one.